We have seen in a previous video how a couple of Counter-Strike titles could seemingly be connected to the Half-Life universe. With Counter-Strike Source, it appeared to maintain a close association with Half-Life, as it was made during the tail end of Half-Life 2's development. This allowed many Half-Life 2 assets to be shared with the game. It also maintained connections to older Counter-Strike titles in a number of ways. What if I were to tell you, though, that there were connections to another Valve universe in Counter-Strike Source? Like with Half-Life, Source's connection to this universe can be seen through assets. On Nuke, we see that the power plant is under the MAC branding. As it turns out, there is another MAC-branded power plant somewhere else. It's located right next to the airport in Newburgh, as seen in the Left 4 Dead 1 campaign Dead Air. Asset reuse isn't the sole connection, though. Left 4 Dead 1 actually has quite a lot of technical links to Counter-Strike Source, as CSS is the origin point for the game as a whole.
While we were developing bots for Counter-Strike Source, we discovered that a few of us armed to the teeth with automatic weaponry against 30 knife-wielding enemy bots was a lot of fun. After shipping Counter-Strike Source in late 2004, we started experimenting with new game prototypes. That basic kernel of small team of friends against hordes of clawing enemies was something we kept coming back to, and we soon realized that the co-op versus the horde game had a ton of potential. We started work in earnest on what was to become Left 4 Dead in early 2005, and in about a week, we had a very rough but very playable and fun prototype. We began our daily cycle of playtest, discuss, and modify that continued for the next 3 years. Left 4 Dead is the result of this evolutionary design process. When we started what was to become Left 4 Dead in late 2004, or Terror Strike as it was known at the time, our team was quite small.
In fact, pre-release versions of Left 4 Dead 1 look strikingly similar to CSS. If we continue to use assets and technical aspects to make links, we can actually bring in another game to this, CSGO. The earliest versions of CSGO's maps are where you find most of these links. Various assets from CSS reappear in several places, with full maps being functionally ported over as is into CSGO. To bring this full circle, CSGO also makes use of several Left 4 Dead 2 assets. And on occasion, some Left 4 Dead 1 assets. And some of the maps original to the game are actually based on areas from Left 4 Dead 2's campaigns. Bank, St. Mark, and Sugarcane are the best examples, though they aren't alone. To compound this even further, Left 4 Dead 2 itself features several weapons from Counter-Strike Source. With these links between each of the games, you can spot even smaller connections. Assets like this paper brand, the beefy computer brand, and several other props reappear over these 4 titles. Even entire vehicles can be found mingling amongst each other. In both versions of Nuke and Assault, you can find a shipping company named Starline. Given all of these connections among these 4 games, it appears we can link the Left 4 Dead games, CSS, and the original run of CSGO maps together. Before we explore that, though, a couple of things need to be said. These connections and their implications weren't a deliberate narrative choice, and it was really all a result of the various development processes for these games. That being said, these processes have inadvertently resulted in some interesting thought experiments, which are grounded in what we can physically see in these titles. A great example of all of this is Lewis's direct mention of certain video games in Left 4 Dead. We will get into that later, though. If we operate under the assumption that all 4 are canon with one another, what do we get? Well, similar to putting some of the CS games in the Half-Life universe, we mostly see the world beyond the playable areas of Left 4 Dead. This insight into other areas includes locations in the US, as well as foreign regions. Looking at the maps and locations, we shall go stateside first. CSGO's Assault appears to be set in the Seattle area based on this road sign. This Seattle connection is aided by the presence of this elevated rail station, which would align with the real-life Link Light Rail operated by Sound Transit. It's even blue, like the real Line 2 in the system, which actually goes vaguely near the places mentioned on the road sign. CSS's Assault seems to be set in the fictional city of Pogeton, at least based on the water tower. In theory, then, Assault could be located in the city Pogeton, Washington. Assault in CSS also has a unique description for it. It talks about how the T's have manipulated the Mar Freight Company and the Harper Appliance Company to act as fronts for money laundering and illegal shipments. Although Assault would be renovated in CSGO, numerous assets remain from CSS, including the presence of specific in-universe companies. Other areas of the US are shown off in the office maps, the militia maps, bank, lake, safe house, and Vertigo. None of these other US maps give specifics as to where they are set, though we have hints of locations for a couple. Office in CSS mentions one of the roads off the complex is named Easy Street, while the CSGO version says it is set in the Central South Office Park. Militia in CSGO shows the ranch is named El Perito. In CSS's description, it says that an informant to the CTs has disclosed the location of where the Ts are holding 4 hostages who were kidnapped the previous week. The CTs are arriving at APCs to try and extract them. Both militias, though, feature these food brands that the Ts have been gathering. Office in both games features a radio that gives a bit more detail to the story of the map.
Denied any involvement in the incident. We have just received word of an ongoing hostage situation taking place in an office in the downtown area. A group of armed men took control of the office at gunpoint earlier today. Most of the employees escaped relatively unharmed during the initial chaos of the takeover, but 4 people are unaccounted for and have been verified to be hostages. The reason behind this terrorist action remains a mystery. With no end to the conflict in sight, authorization has been given for a SWAT team to enter the office and attempt a daring hostage rescue. In other news, the President has stated today that
Part of Office in CSGO is workspace for the Shepherd Mortgage Company. We know this thanks to the slideshow for them you can find in the meeting room near T-Spawn. Lake also features the designs and a prototype for an exotic type of boat. The actual bomb objective for Lake is a floor safe. The full map seems to be set near a small house that is on the property of a larger mansion, with further additions being built on this land. Based on this wall decal, Vertigo seemingly appears to be set on the 89th floor of this building. The bank, InBank, belongs to Roberts Savings and Trust. CSGO's early renditions of the 2 dust maps also show us the activities of the US military overseas. Both sets of dust maps across both Counter-Strike games appear to be part of the same country, sporting this flag which can be seen painted on walls. Dust 1's and Dust 2's CSS descriptions are the same. They both describe that the Ts are trying to bomb chemical weapon crates in the area. This country appears to have been a former French colony, as while there isn't a lot of French, both dust maps feature a street named Rue Ibn Khafaja. Mirage doesn't seem to possess that flag, but contains even more French, suggesting it is set in either Morocco, Algeria, or Tunisia. Europe can also be extensively seen in this universe, like with the map Piranesi. Piranesi mostly reiterates what we see in the older versions of the map. Villa Piernesi is a neo-Romanesque museum opening soon, but the T's are wanting to destroy the exhibits. The villa is named after and features the art and architecture of Giovanni Battista Piranesi, who was an Italian archaeologist in the 18th century that had a specific interest in Rome. There are two main exhibits the T's are after, which are the ancient sundial of Mad Emperor Fred and a grand orrery. Unlike the old version, this version gives patrons of the museum the opportunity to eat food off of old earthenware. Compound and port show Eastern Europe more specifically. In Port's description, it mentions that separatists are attempting to disrupt shipping at and around economically vital ports along the northern coast of this unknown country. Cobblestone and Chateau both appear to be in Western Europe. Chateau and Cobble in CSS have an interlinked story, brought forward from the older titles. Supposedly, in the CSS rendition of Cobble, this was Lord William's country home. Government proposals have apparently made him the target of assassination. The T's are attempting to use their C4 to damage his home and take him out. Chateau takes place after the T's successfully damaged CSS Cobble, though Lord William managed to survive. He's now remodeling his home in Chateau, and the T's are trying to prevent this renovation. Lord William would suggest that these two maps take place in the UK, with Lord William being in the House of Lords. Cobble in CSGO, though, appears to be set in metropolitan France, based on the signage and terrain. Here, it is set in a medieval-era castle which has been converted into a museum. Given the vast design differences between the two cobbles, it could be argued that they are two separate locations. Overpass and baggage are located in Germany. Overpass is set in and around Parkenlager Schuneck, which is in between the roads of Seeburger Damm, Steinenterstrasse, and Niederdorfstrasse. There is a TTK bank office along Seeburger Damm. You can also find an ad outside of the playable space for a truck that is seen both elsewhere in CSGO and in Left 4 Dead. Baggage also has several flight boards reused from Left 4 Dead 1, which repeats the airlines from Dead Air, though it is also only given US destinations. The plane on the runway, though, is named Air Teal, which isn't in Left 4 Dead, nor is it on the boards. Although completely obscured from the main map, this Air Teal plane actually has a severely damaged wing. We also see the country of Italy in the map's Inferno, and the appropriately named Italy. In Italy, we see examples of a violent struggle, likely explaining the hostages the T's have. Despite the more Central European architecture, Tides appears to be set in Italy, based on some of the wall posters you can spot around the map. Tides as a whole, though, appears to be some sort of tourist destination, with German theming to many of the stores seen around the map. Europe isn't the only foreign locale, though. We have Aztec being set somewhere in either Mexico or Central America. There's also Havana in CSS, which is set in Cuba. Havana's description in CSS is the same as the older games. It talks about how the T's have taken their hostages at the Habana, Vaiha, and are awaiting a chopper to exfil everyone. Monastery appears to be set in Tibet. St. Mark and Sugarcane appear to both be located somewhere tropical and French-speaking. Sugarcane is located at the JP Sugar Factory. Sugarcane's bomb site is, similar to the lake, a safe built into a wall. The flag you can spot in St. Mark is a storm warning. A story file, as well as the props for the map, place shoots in Vietnam. not every location is even clear-cut on some basic locational info. Terrain in CSS and the initial version of the map in CSGO were functionally the same, with the only differences being language. CSS used English, and CSGO used Russian. Narratively, the two versions of the map are the same. Toxic waste comes to this place via train, and it is handled by the company in charge of the site. The map texture seen in a side room is also one that appears in the non-canonical, though official, campaign named Coldstream in Left 4 Dead 2. Given that the skybox in CSS uses Half-Life 2's Eastern European assets, I'm willing to say this is likely the same location between games. Specifically, that train is set in Russia, despite the English text in CSS. In a very similar situation, Nuke in CSS is set somewhere in the US, while Nuke in CSGO is set in Germany. This is also despite having functionally the same layout. The notable changes, though, are that the MAC branding has been dropped for the German HARs, and the rest of the plant signs are now in German. The cinematic trailer goes with the map being in Germany, and even features the GSG-9 as the CTs. However, CSS's description for the map remains in the game, which would point to the map being in the US. That description gives some extra story. It says that a silent alarm has been tripped from the guard shack of the MAC nuclear power plant. While the plant is decommissioned, there are still remaining fuel rods that are due to be removed next week. Security is light, so the T's plan to blow up the rods. Outside the naming, this seems to be generally the narrative of the CSGO map as well. Map textures for Southern California can be found in both renditions of Nuke. With these textures reappearing in Left 4 Dead 1. Although this falls outside of scope for the video, Valve did double down in the map remakes and in CS2 of Nuke being set in the US and Train being set in Russia. The presence of fictional countries or US cities through Counter-Strike is also in line with Left 4 Dead, which features several original locations that don't exist. Locations aren't the only thing that gets expanded upon. We also get information for various events and factions. In CSS, thanks to faction descriptions, we can also see the real-world history that the CTs are connected to. New in-universe events through the backstories of the Ts are also added. All of those T stories are from the older games. CSGO doesn't include faction descriptions, as the factions are map-locked. In CSGO, we see the FBI going after the anarchists in Office, and the Phoenix Connection in both Militia and Assault. They also fight the Professionals in Vertigo. SWAT teams also face off against the Professionals in Bank and Safe House. The Navy SEALs fight the Phoenix Connection at Lake, likely due to the boat prototype there. On foreign soil, though, still close to home, the SEALs fight them again in Aztec. They would also be deployed to fight the Balkan faction in Train. In Europe, we have the GSG-9 fighting the Phoenix Connection in both Overpass and Baggage. The GIGN fights the Phoenix Connection in Kabul. The Balkan T faction fights with the GIGN in Italy, and then fights the SAS in Inferno. The SAS would go on to fight the Elite crew in Mirage. Meanwhile, the GIGN fights the Pirates 3 times in St. Mark, Sugarcane, and Shoots. In Monastery, the GSG-9 gets their attempt at fighting the Balkan faction. Most of the weapons seen across all of the games are functionally the same as their real-life counterparts, and share a lot of commonality because of that. In the case of the Scar from Left 4 Dead 2, those overseas deployments mentioned for Dust were actually something considered by Valve for Left 4 Dead 2. Tristan Reedford explains in the developer commentary.
Left 4 Dead 1 had a good, fictionally justifiable cast of guns, the M16 being a standard police and military weapon, for example. In Left 4 Dead 2, we had the opportunity to do something a bit less generic and use some more interesting guns. while still being aware that we had to justify their place in the game. The Desert Rifle, for example, is used to suggest that the military had rerouted guns meant for the Middle East back to deal with the domestic crisis, hence the desert camouflage scheme on the gun.
The MAC-10, which is only usable by the Ts in CSGO, is also described by Tristan Reedford as a criminal weapon.
Whereas the silenced SMG is more of an underground, criminal-looking weapon, so it's interesting to think how this has found its way into the survivors' hands.
While the Molotovs are different between the games, the Molotov in the Sacrifice comic is similar to the one you see in CSGO. The actual brands for these guns, though, vary. Likely because of licensing agreements, the Counter-Strike titles make use of real brands and names for their firearms. This is incredibly obvious in CSS, where you can even see H&K's actual logo on the USB. The Left 4 Dead games do not appear to have these same deals, though, leading to several original brands making different weapons. For example, the Finleyville Armory makes the M1911 pistols in Left 4 Dead 1, while the American Armory made the M16A2 in both games. However, the CSS weapons that made it into Left 4 Dead 2 maintain their real brands and names. Now that we have seen what this shared universe is like, we still have one dangling thread. Valve, as a video game developer, exists in the Left 4 Dead universe. Lewis and Ellis are also directly aware of Valve's games.
Oh man, this is just like Counter-Strike.
Dude, this is just like Team Fortress 2.
Man, I feel like I'm Gordon Freeman.
On top of this, as previously mentioned, CSS has some narrative connections to Half-Life as well, featuring numerous companies from Half-Life 2. One way to explain this is that the companies in Half-Life 2 are actual companies in this universe, and from Lewis and Ellis' perspective, Half-Life 2 is actually full of product placement. Seeing Vico, Northern Petrol, and PAC, it'd be like seeing DHL, Shell, and Moscovich throughout Half-Life 2. Lewis's reference to Counter-Strike itself, although meta, doesn't really contradict too much. From his perspective, it would just mean CS is also full of product placement, and would be a reinterpretation of some recent policing and military events. Everything we've seen across all the games points to the world in this universe, aside the zombie hordes, being very analogous to our own.
Does anybody know how to make a hurricane? A zombie?
What?
They're drinks, seriously.
Even several other real-world things are canon thanks to a couple of comments by survivors.
Oh, I'm glad I can't tweet, because I could never fit today in 140 characters.
No more internet? No more Xbox? No more nothing.
Oh, CrossFit never trained me for this.
It does appear, though, that there is a slight increase in criminal and paramilitary activity. Even among the 8 survivors, 2 of them are known criminals. Naturally, this begs the question about the outbreak of the green flu. Both nuke renditions actually do mention timeframes the games likely take place in. The notices in CSS mention the plant was decommissioned in 2005. And while the German signs in CSGO don't mention the decommission date, it does mention that the buildings were expected to be demolished in 2010. Given that this hasn't happened yet, this would likely mean these maps take place before the green flu outbreak. As shown in this video, the Left 4 Dead games take place in late October 2009. Militia in CSS, at the very least, appears to be set right around the fall too. Office's blast of snow could be a sudden blizzard arriving early, depending on where it is specifically supposed to be set. If they are set before Left 4 Dead and the Green Flu, then by the end of Left 4 Dead 2, for every American map in the Counter-Strikes, the infected horde would have already overrun any survivors there. This is because the virus has spread to the other side of the Mississippi River, which we see at the other side of the bridge in the parish. It has even reached the other side of the Ohio River, as seen in the CETA map in Dead Center. The map in Crash Course also suggests, though it doesn't outright state, that it might be on the west coast already. This would mean that if Assault is in Washington State, the virus is heading in that direction, if not already there. For the non-American maps, it's a little less certain of their fates, though a similar outcome would befall them if the virus spread worldwide. Alternatively, the Counter-Strike maps might be set in an alternate universe where the virus didn't happen. This alternative universe suggestion also works well with the criminal element. There's a lot more evidence that helps expand upon these two ideas, and even better connects all the games we have talked about more generally. However, that would require going down an even deeper rabbit hole.
Follow my instructions, just like old times.